Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's classic novel is now a terrifying adventure module available for download at questgivers.com. I review the Witcher tabletop role-playing game today on Dungeon Craft. Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor DungeonMaster, and this channel is about playing the ultimate game of D&D and other tabletop role-playing games.
And I'm Deathbringer. Level up your game by subscribing and click the bell icon so you'll be informed whenever we upload new content.
Today we're looking at the Witcher tabletop RPG, first published in 2018. And you may ask, Professor, why are you only getting around to reviewing it now? Good question. I don't ask for review copies of games, so I don't often review them in a timely manner. I review them when I get around to reading them, and I purchase them with my personal funds and funds provided by my patrons. Patrons, thank you very much. And I'd like to think this helps me maintain some objectivity. So let's take a look. So The Witcher RPG by Talsorian Games. It is hardbound and it features outstanding cover art. I mean, this is some of the best RPG art you're ever going to see. It's movie poster quality art here. Cast and crew, the writers are Cody and Lisa Pondsmith, with layout and design by Mike Pondsmith, who is a legend in game design. His name is up there with Arneson and Gygax. Cody Pondsmith is his son, and the legend continues with this book because it is outstanding. The first thing you're going to notice is the art. I mean, it is just fantastic. It's not just the cover art that's great. Every piece of interior art is fantastic. We have a quote from Sapkowski from The Last Wish. That is the one Witcher book I've read. I never read the second book. I've never played the video game, but I'm given to understand that the game is set between the second and third installments of the video game, and all your favorite characters are here. Geralt of Rivia, Yennefer, Dandelion. You'll have to forgive me if I mispronounce character names because I've actually never seen the television show. I only know it from reading it, and I'm not sure how to pronounce everything correctly. We have traditional races like elves, dwarfs, humans. There's a lot of animosity between them in the Witcher world. And this is one of the highlights here of the book. It is the life path. You use random dice to create a background for your character, and you randomly determine your homeland, your family, your parents. Are they dead? Are they alive? What's your family fate? What's your parental fate? And there are 30 different background stories here. Family status, most influential friend, siblings, how many of them? Do they hate you? Do you like them? Your life events. Did you lead a fortunate or misfortunate life? Do you have allies? Do you have enemies? Who was wrong? Why do they hate you? There's a chart for romantic tragedies and problematic love, which I love, and your personal style, values, and sample names. I've seen this done in indie games like Knave for years, and it's creeping into other games like Conan, but I've never seen it done so well. I rolled up a number of sample characters and got several different, diverse, fantastic, really playable backgrounds. Like, even if you're not playing the Witcher game, it is just fantastic. Profession, there are, I think, 10 or so. You got bard, craftsman, crafting is a big deal in this game, criminal, doctor, merchant, priest, mage, man-at-arms, witcher, which is a race and a class, and each gets a splash page. It is a skill-based system, and you have a number of statistics: intelligence, reflexes, dexterity, body, speed, empathy, craft, will, and luck. And your skills are based on those ability scores. Skill levels go from 1 to inept to 13, where you are super heroic. And the resolution system is very simple. You roll a 10-sided die, you add your skill and your applicable ability score, and that determines whether you succeed. So if you are opposing another person in a fight, you roll that 10-sided die, ability score, skill level, compare the results, and the one that wins hits the other. Really creepy art there. When you level up, you get additional skill points, which you can allocate, and each class has a skill tree, which defines your skill. And look at the layout. It's just so fantastic in this grid, and they're all equal. Really impressive. I think skill trees are really complex to design. I mean, this must have taken, did take years, and it really shows. It reads really smoothly. Lots of stuff on gear and weapons description, armor descriptions. Magic is based on the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water, so you don't get as many spells as, say, D&D, but they're more focused and thematic. There's also priest invocations and druid invocations, witcher signs, which are sort of the equivalent of cantrips in D&D. Rituals, learning magic, and crafting. Again, this is a very craft-centric game, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So you can craft armor out of animal body parts or alchemical potions, how to repair weapons, an entire chapter on alchemy and different substances that you can create. Combat in The Witcher is deadly. If it looks familiar, you may be familiar with Pondsmith's cyberpunk system. It's a derivative of that system, and you can only take 1 or 2 hits before you are extremely wounded, and there are critical hit charts that give you a cracked jaw, lost teeth, skull fracture, damaged eye, septic shock. It's really gory. So it's the type of combat system where you don't want to get into combat if you can avoid it. And if you do get into combat, you really want to get the jump on your opponents. And combats are really quick and deadly. It reminds me a lot of the Warhammer Fantasy system, but while that game always promised to be a grim world of perilous adventure, I never thought it was as deadly as advertised. This game really is. Characters can get maimed very easily. Which brings us to the Game Master Guide, which is excellent. It talks about what a GM does and the players are not your enemy. Unlike most RPGs, it's got a very informal tone. It speaks right directly to you as opposed to down to you. So your special snowflake and plot armor, this is when you have this NPC PC, and they say, that's not altogether bad, but this is the way you have to do it. They have a section called Romance and How Not to Make It Weird. It's one of the first mainstream products where I've seen that addressed. As a game master, if you're playing a romance with another person, even though it's with their character, things can get weird. So they address that here. Then you're going to see things like beat charts with the hook, the development, the cliffhanger, and climax. These are concepts very familiar if you're a longtime viewer of Dungeon Craft, as is blue booking, the idea that players keep notes, blue books being the old college books when you used to write essays in college. But a lot of this stuff is dungeon crafty, and it's really great. Running Witcher. This isn't an epic fantasy game, and monsters aren't always the evil ones. A lot of times the monsters are bad, but humans are even worse. And this is a very dark, low fantasy world where the stakes are very personal. It's not epic fantasy where you're saving the world. It's the type of fantasy where you're saving a village and trying to make life better for the people closest to you. Again, more great art with these ghouls gnawing on entrails. A great random possession chart. Again, this is the type of stuff you see a lot in OSR games, but here, this is a mainstream game. And this is another example of that tone I was talking about, that informal tone. Relics and min-maxers. Listen to this. Min-maxer, popularity in games, highly unpopular. Simple definition, a player who spends hours, even days, reading through every bit of source material, every rule and online guide to create the ultimate character. And then he writes, being married to a top-tier min-maxer, I have to deal with this a lot. They write to you in a very conversational tone, as opposed to a more formal textbook tone. How to develop a campaign, curses, world states, personal fate, and Witchers, a chapter that every fan's going to want to read. I imagine a lot of people are going to want to be Witchers, and this talks about life as a Witcher, Witcher gear, mutagens, and so forth. So then we have a chapter on Relics the Bestiary, which puts its own spin on traditional monsters like bandits and ghouls and so forth. I think you recognize the Grave Hag from one of the earlier Witcher stories. But I love the layout with the picture and the stats here and a little bit of description here. And you flip and it's a totally different monster. I like that a lot. And we conclude with a short scenario, To All a Good Night, which looks pretty good. It's got a 4-page character sheet, which I think is a little long, but in a skill-based game, you're going to have a longer character sheet, and it's top-notch, as is the rest of the book. The layout, the production values. Did I mention it's stitched as well as glued? Everything in this book is top-notch, pro quality. Yet its many random charts and conversational tone give it an OSR vibe, and I give it my enthusiastic recommendation. Whether you enjoy The Witcher from the books, games, or TV show, the role-playing game is top-notch. It is not just a cash grab. It is a great game. But that's what I think. What do you think? You can put your ideas and share your experience with The Witcher RPG in the comments below. Also below, you'll find a link to purchase The Witcher, as well as my own module, Macbeth, available at questgivers.com, as well as Dungeon Craft on Facebook and Patreon. And if you want more Dungeon Craft content, you can find it right here. May all your rolls be 20s.
Deathbringer again. I'm not afraid of you, Geralt. You're about as scary as Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So if you want a real challenge, I'll be waiting for you. And in the meantime, click on more Dungeon Craft.